Welcome back to another episode of the PokeStop podcast. I am, as always, your host, Zach Proud. Today with my co-host, as always, looking just dapper as hell, even though it's 60 degrees outside, in the beautiful state of Ohio, is Thad Wayand. Thad, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, Zach. Just enjoying this weather while I can before it turns to snow in 2 days. So that'll be great.
Is it actually? That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, I didn't really pay attention to that, but this is not a weather podcast, all right? Even though it may seem like it after last week's crash out. I mean, I like to think of myself as someone who can crash out pretty hard. But last week was a masterclass, I feel like. That crash out was legendary. I mean, the skid marks are still on YouTube, you know? If anyone wants to go check that out, make sure you do that on YouTube. We also now have the podcast on anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Music, all the favorite podcast places. So if you would like to listen audio or just support us on those platforms as well, we, as always, would appreciate it. But that, we don't have much to talk about this week, I think.
No, this has been a relatively quiet week in Pokemon world. We had the big Pokemon Day announcement. All the fun 3 prizes got announced, and now we're just biding our time and waiting for rotation.
Yeah, I think that's where all of us are at right now. We're just kind of like, what do we do now? And what do we, we have the Vancouver Regional Championships coming up this weekend. Maybe we'll get some more information. We still don't know what the pre-release promos are, even though those start in a little over a week and a half. They'll start on Saturday, I believe the 11th.
The 17th.
11th or 12th? Oh, am I that off?
18th.
Yeah, the 11th will be Tuesday. You're right. Yeah. So we're still waiting for that.
Whatever.
So
no, hold on. 15th, right? Whatever that Saturday is. Whatever 2 Saturdays.
Yes, March 15th. So we are 11 days from pre-release weekend, the first of 2 pre-release weekends where stores are able to host pre-releases. So if you want to get the cards early, make sure to hit up the Pokemon event locator. Find a league doing pre-releases near you. I know, at least at our league, people seem very excited for the pre-release. And I think it's just because it's the only time I think they'll be able to find product at an MSRP.
That's the one thing that I do like about the pre-releases is I think most places, especially around us, are just doing MSRP like regular for pre-releases, which is kind of nice. Can't speak to any other card shops out there, but at least most of them by us are.
It would be kind of crazy if stores started doing like market price for pre-releases. Like, you imagine paying like $60 for a pre-release?
For a pre-release kit that you get nothing in, you get 60
packs?
Bad cards or 40 bad cards.
4 packs.
Yeah.
I mean, which like wouldn't be that far off of where Prismatic is now. I think those were sitting at about $15 a pack. So yeah, like I really hope we never get to that point. Like, it would be absolutely brutal. And hopefully, hopefully as less collector hungry sets get released, hopefully, the last couple sets are just like a fad, and it's just we had Pikachu and now we have Eevee, and hopefully as we get more of these trainer sets, hopefully less scalping happens in the hobby. But I am not optimistic about that at all.
Yeah, it's tough to be optimistic about that right now.
Yeah, it's really difficult. It really sucks for the for the player and like I guess the retail collector, like the guy who just likes Pokemon and just collects because he likes the cards and not. I literally hate seeing TikToks where I just see like some kid like being like, I don't want to open this pack because then I'm gonna ruin the resale value. And I was like, when I was 10 years old, I would rip open packs before I even knew I was gonna buy them. Like, I'm just like, I just want to open packs.
Yeah, I mean, if I can go back in time and unrip all the
all the base set and stuff, like,
dude, I opened so much like Neo Revelation and Neo Discovery. Those were like my favorite packs to open back when I was a kid.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because Gen 2 Pokemon were always my favorite, and they still are. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, those were fun times in the Pokemon trading card game. So hopefully we can get back to that. Hopefully Pokemon kind of figures out a way to print enough cards. It seems really weird that we're having to say that in the year 2025, but this is the world we're kind of in right now. So hopefully things
It's
get better.
crazy. Well, it's crazy if you look around like every other card game, like no one else is really experiencing this like at all.
Yeah.
And even when they were, like, even when you look back at like some of the heydays of like Magic, like the prints were still there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't buy the they're doing their best argument. I see on Twitter a lot from a lot of older heads, and people who just like have been around the hobby so long, they're kind of like used to like this failure to understand the basics of your game. I don't know. Like, why are we not just overprinting this to hell?
Yeah, it just feels like a missed opportunity for them to just appease their loyal fans.
Yeah, it just seems weird. We're not just overprinting this to give the players and the people who want to collect, like, because everyone has a budget of like no one's budget is I'm gonna buy X packs. Everyone's budget is I'm gonna spend X dollars. So it's like, you'll at least I can't imagine they won't make more money because they don't make money off of, packs being $18 a pack at Thad's card shop, right? Like they make the same they would anyway. So if they printed 3 times the amount of product, in theory, they'd be making 3 times the amount of money. But that is not why we're here today, Thad. We're here to talk about next format, which I think both of us are pretty excited for. The Journey Together format is, it's kind of here. Yeah. We are about 3.5 weeks from release. I'm excited about it. Our league this coming Monday, we're gonna start doing our post rotation. We're done with the 2025 standard format. We're moving on to post rotation with the new Journey Together cards. I know a lot of our players were really excited. I think there was like kind of like that shock when we said we were gonna go to post rotation, but I think most of our players now are like, hell yeah. We had our last league challenge this past week, went really well. And I think a lot of our players are just very excited to play the new cards, move on to something new, something exciting. So I think this week would be a great opportunity for us to kind of look through the decks coming out, look at old decks, new decks, see how things we think, at least looking at this. You've done a lot more testing for the next format than I have. But I think next format, there's some really interesting stuff coming out. And a lot of stuff that was good still is good. Some stuff that wasn't so good gets a lot better. And some stuff that sucked is still going to suck. Shout out,
decks are bad.
Pidgeot Control. You're still bad. No, I think honestly, we got to start with Bolt. My pride and joy. My long-necked Thundercat. All right. I think he's still cracked. I don't think he gets bad. Like, I don't. Like, yes. Like, the argument I keep hearing from people, because I'm like, I'm the Bolt guy at this point. Like, I have played, for those who are new to this podcast, I have been playing Raging Bolt the entire season. I have 400 championship points. I have won. I am 1 cup away from having more cup wins than fingers. At least on one hand, I have 5 cup wins. I've won challenges. I've been playing Raging Bolt like nonstop. I think I took like a 2-week break for Roaring Moon, which is just darkness energy Bolt. Like, yeah. It just feels like Bolt with more steps. I'm going to be honest. But I think Bolt is in a great spot still. Like, we lose PokeStop, we lose Greninja, we lose Trekking Shoes. But Thad, there is this funny little bird in the standard format called Noctowl. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's pretty cool.
Yep.
There is and we've in our own like testing we both have done. I've played Bolt almost exclusively in that, and it feels great. I think I'm bricking just as little as I was, with the PokeStop Trekking Shoes version of Bolt. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Bolt doesn't get bad in any meaningful capacity.
Yeah.
I would say the only thing is like And again, in sort of some of our limited testing, it feels to me it feels a little bit less inconsistent just because you don't draw as much. But it's solely dependent on being able to get your knockdowns going early.
Yeah, I think especially if it depends on the matchup too, right? Like some matchups, it's really bad to pop down a squawk, but then it's also like if you're not going to set up, you're going to have to do it anyway. Like, so it's kind of like
Yeah.
damned if you do, damned if you don't. And almost it feels like squawk is also better in the next format because when you're running area 0, and I also love running like one counter stadium. Right now that's just been like jamming tower, but I could also see, I could see Temple of Sinnoh if there was like some deck.
Temple rotates.
Does Temple rotate? Oh, I didn't even think about that. I thought it had a
Temple
silver
rotates.
back. I thought it had the stupid silver border.
No, I would say another good alternative stadium that no one's really talking about for Bolt or even like running is Cycling Road.
Cycling road could be very
Just,
interesting because it also helps you. It's not just like a control. Like get rid of the
yeah, I
get
mean,
rid
not,
of the tools.
yeah, not every deck really wants to get rid of energy from their hands,
Yeah.
right? Just a +1. Like most decks prefer not to at
Yeah.
this point. Like you have to think they want to draw into the energy,
Sure.
or
That's
just
just
keep
great for
energy in
Bolt,
deck. Yeah,
especially early. Just being able to discard
yeah,
that extra energy. I think the
it's
deck
like
also
it's a background ninja.
yeah, basically. The deck also feels a lot better too because I'm running more Ultra Balls and I'm running more energy discard. So it's like I think the mid late game can get a little sketchier, especially if you're not able to get your Hoot Hoots and your Noctowls on board
Yeah,
to be able to find those really big resources. I think like that it's the thinning of the deck that gets a lot more difficult. Like before, you could, I'm ripping Stop, I'm ripping Greninja. That's 5 cards right off the rip
yeah.
that I'm just getting every turn. And that's before we even start talking about the 3 off Asada, the Ogre Pond draw, the Pheasantipity, Mew even for a hot minute.
You could +4 on all your on shoes. 2 off
Yeah,
each shoes.
shoes. Yeah. So there was so much thinning, to where now there
Yeah.
isn't as much thinning, which definitely makes the deck a little bit sketchier for sure. But I still think it's in a really good spot. I think
No, I agree.
the one bad matchup you have is probably Walls, which I don't think is that bad. Which like people
No,
might say I'm like coping, but like I just don't think it's that bad of a matchup if you know how to play it correctly.
no. I think in sort of, and again, sort of in our limited testing, it didn't feel bad from what we were playing. Just
Yeah.
felt like Walls also has a problem with setup. They just sometimes never get there.
Yeah.
And by the time they get like one setup, you're kind of already putting damage on it, and you're like one
Yeah.
Farigiraf, and you're already putting damage on it, and they're kind of just like in a bad spot.
For sure. Yeah, and last week at our locals, which is still at a different local we went to on Wednesday, it was Surging Sparks format. But I did play against a wall deck and I beat it. I took 6 prizes against the wall deck and I killed 2 Farigirafs. So, like, I don't know. I feel like if you kill 2 Farigirafs, you're winning the game.
It can be done.
Like, yeah, like I think it just takes you have to play the matchup very well, and there's not much room for error for the Bolt player, but like you definitely have routes that don't involve
No, I
Cornerstone.
agree.
So yeah. Moving on, kind of a deck I think you've been hyping a bit is Roaring Moon. So I'm gonna let you take this one. Tell me why Roaring Moon is good.
Yeah, my only reasoning for even like really trying to cook with Roaring Moon is I feel like especially like around us, it feels like Walls will be a prevalent deck. And it's hard going into a new format. A lot of times control style decks do overperform just due to the variable of the unknown.
Yeah.
And just being able to play around players who may not have had work into that style deck. And Roaring Moon is kind of like just blitzes through those style of decks.
Yeah.
And if you go with more of like a single prize build, if you sort of like play it a little bit more like ancient boxy,
Sure.
you definitely have like more outs to getting into the game, you definitely you can, I don't know, you can single prize board the big basic or like the bigger setup decks like Charizard and Bolt.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You mean Pult?
I mean outside of yeah, did
You
I
said
meant to say
Bolt.
Bolt if I said Bolt.
I was like,
Yeah,
yeah,
my bad.
that setup deck Raging Bolt.
Yeah. I meant that. And then you also have like I think favorable matchup in Agardi now. Like super like you already kind of favorable, but now you're like super
Yeah.
favorable. Because Guardy is so much slower.
Mhm.
Or Guardy's plays a lot faster and they put a 2-prizer down much earlier and they can't get it off the board.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit more of a volatile matchup for Guardy. You know, I kind of look around. It's just hard to get the deck consistent though, which is its biggest problem. No more Dark Patch is bad. No more Stop is bad. Budu is bad.
Yeah,
so,
but it's really brutal for you specifically.
Yeah.
My one reason why I don't think it's good, there's this purple ghost guy called Dustnor. I have always just felt since like the introduction of Dustnor, it's just so bad for moons. Like it's just so easy to get trapped in this like if I blow you up, then I'm gonna get blown up and then you're gonna 4-prize me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. It is
Like
a high risk,
like
high
for sure. Yeah, like if you don't play the Dustnor decks, you're chilling. Like you probably have very favorable matchups, and if you like metagaming your tournament and you're like, okay, I don't expect much, much Charizard, much Dragapult, this could be a very good play. Like you get through Pikachus, you get through the Farigirafs. You have a really good Walls matchup, I feel like, as well. Just because, like,
I feel like the Walls matchup is like free.
Yeah, like Cornerstone doesn't stop you, Farigiraf doesn't stop you, and they're not fast enough to keep up.
No,
like you're just gonna blow them out of the water, and like I guess they can try and like Monkey Dory and create some kind of big turn, but like, cool, you got a 4-prize turn when I'm at 2 prizes. The slip's there. There's a pen there. Those French fries, if you could just take those, put them in the bag, just drop
directly
it
to bag.
in the bag. I don't need the receipt. We do not need a receipt. I'm not returning these. I'm gonna eat these in my car on my way to league.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna.
I will not advocate for Roaring Moon being a good deck right now. I will just advocate for it being a little bit more real than people will give it credit for.
That's fair. Up next, the other of the trio of turbo decks we have had in the standard format is Miraidon. This deck definitely has to go through kind of a reinvention of itself. It loses all the Vs. We lost Raichu. We lost Raikou. We also lost Luminion. We lost Rotom. It loses a lot. Like, it loses a lot of its resources, some of its big attackers. But I think ultimately this deck is still good.
Yeah, anything with Iron Hands has potential.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because I definitely thought Chen Pao would actually make sort of a comeback after rotation. Just because like even though you lose like some key components like Irida, I just think a deck that can just like get an Iron Hands turn 2 just feels so good.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. Yeah, I think it will really just struggle against these stage 2s. Just because I don't know if it has a way to deal with that. And you're just kind of you're never relying on the hands.
Yeah, you're never outputting enough damage to like actually matter, I guess.
Yeah. You just don't have the big blow up Raichu anymore.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So that deck I think will still have a place. It just won't be as strong as I think it was before. But speaking of big old setup decks, the old red lizard, Cherry's Aired. Zard I think is one of those decks that has a really annoying habit of not being able to die. Like we bury it so often and it just like comes back to life somehow.
And
I think it's just such a strong attacker. Like it's almost like Bolt in that way. Like its attack is just so good. Like it's just never going to be bad until it's out of format.
Yeah.
And you like, as long as there's ways to build it, it will exist.
Well, 100%.
I don't even think this deck really changes. I think Badu just gets less impactful.
No, there's like a lot of like these crazy Zard lists going around right now. You have like the Noctowl Zard, you have the Dunsparce Zard. And honestly, I think the way to play is just as straightforward as possible. You just lean in with the Zard. If you're really concerned about walls, you probably just tech in the Gouging Fire, like a Gouging Fire Kieran combo sort of situation. And you probably play the Max Belt for your A spec just to get KOs that much quicker. But to fix the math. So like, I don't think that Zard's really gonna be bad. I think that players right now are just like trying too hard with it.
Yeah, I think it's that it feels like the new format, like throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. And unfortunately, a lot of these that floor is just gonna be covered in deck lists for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's kind of what is really exciting about a new format is you have this very exciting newness, especially with this format. Like, we have a very brutal rotation of just, we lose a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff people have been using. I mean, just in the Vs, like there's just an insane amount. So I think this format really requires a lot more than past formats in the way that people have to really think about their deck building. And there's not much, there's not much outside of like the Champions League stuff and City Leagues from Japan. There's not much information out there for like what decks are good, what cards are good and what decks. So it's just kind of, it's very interesting and very fun in a certain kind of way. I just wish I didn't have a regional the day after rotation. Like that would have been great. Like if I didn't. So I think it just forces a lot of us who are going to it. I very much do. It just forces a lot of us to really have to just grind an entire format and like, at least, if not like break the format, but at least understand the format and understand like what decks are good, why they're good, how they're good, and how you can in your deck counter that in your matches. Which is really fun, but also infuriating.
No, it's tough. And I think that's why, like, an event like the Fulgur 3K is going to be so important, especially for us going to Atlanta.
For sure. Yeah, I'm very excited for that. I actually saw on their Discord today that actually sold out, which is really cool. Which is kind of insane because they're like new tournament space. It's like 150 people, and it like filled up, which is absolutely wild to me. But so I'm very excited for that.
Was it just standard or did GLC sell out too?
I think just standard.
That tracks.
I can't imagine there's 150 people traveling for GLC. I think it will sell very well. I'm not trying to come across like a GLC hater, as I own 5 GLC decks. I'll go grab them right now if you want. I just don't think. I think GLC is a very fun format for a more casual player.
Yeah, dude, GLC is the best format in the game.
That is a statement that you can make on your own. The PokeStop podcast
is a correct
any standard outside of standard. It's the greatest. It is the standard. It is the standard of all formats. But anyway, Thad, I think we should move on to another standard of decks I hate. The gold standard of Gardevoir. I would like to punt Ralts off a cliff. I thought this deck.
I don't think. And I actually think people are underselling it right now. It feels a lot better in my testing than I thought it would. The blender gives you so many more options when it comes to like Pokemon utility. You are still pretty slow, but I mean, you think like most lists that I've seen are throwing Rare Candy back in, which I think is like really good.
Yeah.
The secret box doesn't feel bad either. So
okay. I think the secret box makes more sense. than the blender, because blender late is bad, but like secret box all the time is good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're not playing anything on board that discards your energy for you. Like you're just playing vessels and ultra balls, and you're kind of hoping you just draw into them, which kind of feels bad because you just play like more research. But then you're playing research with Arvins, and like,
Yeah. I think it's kind of like, I guess that's really a subjective thing, right? Like, I don't know. I don't like decks running an A spec that they don't play the game without. That's why I've never liked Trolley. I've never been a big blender guy. I don't even like Energy Search Pro and Goldango. Honestly, if I was playing Goldango, I'd probably play Hyper Aroma.
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm a wild child with that one. I understand that's a very controversial take, and I'm sure like everyone's gonna be telling me how wrong I am. Like everyone's gonna like show me their Energy Search Pros. Be like, hey, this card's really good. You should try playing this thing all day ago. And I'm gonna be like, but Raging Bolt.
Yeah, I actually have not seen a Guardy play Secret Box in any Japanese list. Now, that's not saying that
It's also an important
that
distinction to mention that if you tie in Japan, you both lose. So slower decks like Gardevoir are going to see less play because of that fact alone.
it's also very true.
So like that's also why I don't even know how much I can validate what they're saying. But I think like Gardevoir is a strong deck, right? Like the same thing with like Zard and Bolt. The ability is so good, and you still have a lot of your attackers. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, but we still have Screamtail, we still have Drifloon, we still have Mawile,
Yeah.
we still have Monkey Dory, like we still have
Mawile's
all
gone.
the Mawile's gone. Okay, but that wasn't that. That was just a win con card. That
It was a
wasn't to
tech.
play the
Yeah,
game.
it was a tech
Yeah,
card.
and honestly, it felt like a tech for bad players. Because I feel like a good player will make sure they have a switch left. Like,
100%.
just to have a switch left. Like, not even for any specific scenario, but just like, this is a resource I may need. And like, I don't want to get trapped and lose the game because I got trapped. But yeah. I think Guardy will always probably be a good deck until it dies. It's also not a deck that kind of gets obliterated by Badu. Because once you set up, it's just finding the attackers. And like with Curlia gone, it's a lot more difficult. But also like if it's a research type deck now, also that could be really strong. They also run Artisan, so like not relying on the item search for a Pokemon is really strong.
Well, you're also playing a lot of Iono too, which is helping reset your opponent a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're bricking a turn and you don't get as powerful of an attack as you want, it might not be terrible for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think this one is also, I think it's, I don't know. I'm not a believer in it, but I'm also just never going to be a believer in Gardevoir. But that's fine.
That's fine.
Up next, though, another deck I don't believe in. Dragapult.
Really?
Yeah, I hate Dragapult. I play good dragons, not bad ones. No, I think Dragapult's actually probably as good as it was this format. There is the Lily's Clefairy, which is kind of interesting. I've seen that in a couple Dragapult lists. I don't think it really is that good in Bolt, which like might be considered a hot take. I just think having extra 2 prizers I can take away isn't as strong as people think it is.
The only reason why Clefairy might be better is because you can initiate the prize trade as Dragapult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I don't want to bench a Bolt until I'm ready to take 2 prizes with it. So I think like obviously like you might have to bench one to start the game kind of thing, and like sure,
right.
But like I could make that argument for every card in the game. Like I don't know. I've always hated the but what if you started argument, because it's like what if I start Pheasantipity every game? Like What if I start Luminion? Like, well, I won't start Luminion anymore. But like, you know, what if I'm like,
Yeah.
what if I start Blood Moon? Like, am I not going to play Blood Moon because I don't want to start it? Like, no, I'm just gonna like acknowledge that RNG is a thing, and it sometimes you don't get to have fun because of that. I think this deck, like, not many things come into the format that have like an insanely good Dragapult matchup.
No, I don't think so. I think Bolt is probably the best in the Dragapult.
Yeah, and that already exists now anyway.
Still. Yeah, still. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing new shows up.
There's nothing new. Yeah, none of the new decks or decks that get like insanely better. None of them really are there to ruin Dragapult's existence.
Right.
Or have like an insanely good Dragapult matchup. So I think it'll be really fun to see how this deck kind of plays.
I agree.
Yeah, I think it'll probably, if I had to guess, I think it will probably be one of the top like stage 2 setup decks. I think for Alligator,
Sure
I think for Alligator might be a better stage 2 deck, but we'll get there. We'll get to there. But first, we have to talk about Goldango, the cheese man, who fresh off a top 4 at EUIC. This one's weird because it loses a lot, but also I think kind of falls in that like it's too good to be bad category.
Yeah.
Because like you lose Irida, you lose PokeStop, you lose Greninja. I think honestly the only super impactful one was losing Greninja. You still have Cypher.
I mean, like yeah, but like when you break down like the list from EUIC doesn't really have, other than the Iridas, doesn't really have anything that's rotating.
Yeah,
it's a like, super like straightforward list. I think that's just how you have to play it. You just take out the Iridas and add in Arvins.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a huge component of when you deck build, go for consistency. Like, if you try to tech, you're trying to play side events.
Teching too much, yeah, you're playing side events.
Yeah. Like over teching is side event city. Like, I'm just gonna be honest about that. So I think this deck.
It didn't even play Irida.
Really, that's actually really crazy.
Yeah,
I kind of love that.
3 Arvin. Actually, almost nothing in this list rotates.
Wow, that's actually crazy. So like, honestly, if I was building Goldango for next format, I'd probably just start there.
Yeah, that's actually crazy.
Rotate?
Just the Greninja. That is the only thing rotating in this list.
You're so chilling. I think honestly, I might just like.
Oh, the Greninja, they played Lost Vacuum.
Okay.
And PokeStop.
So
there's 4 cards. Hold on.
There's the PokeStop 5 cards that rotate. Rough. Yeah, so find new cards. Find 5 new cards. And I guess you could run gear. I could see a couple gear to find like your Arvins and your Cyphers.
Yeah.
You know, I think you just increase consistency. Yeah, but I think Greninja.
No, I agree.
It continues to be a good deck, and I think it'll be really fun to see where this deck goes. It's one of my top picks actually for next format. I think like my top 3, it's probably Bolt, Goldango, and weirdly enough, Ancient Box.
I don't know about that.
I understand it might be a hot take, but I don't know. I got a feeling. You know, maybe it's the ancient Pokemon just called to me or something. Like that's what I'm just like. It's just like ancient copium. I don't know. But up next, a deck that does not run any ancient Pokemon, but it does get some new friends. Thanks to the most Auralist trainer of all time, Hop. We have the Archaladon deck, which has kind of been like, if you get the right meta, a great deck. But if you don't get the right meta, it's absolutely terrible. But it does get some new friends. It gets the new Hopsation, which will really help with the other Hop stuff, really help hit those big stage 2 guys, the 320s, the 330s on Charizard's Gardevoirs and the like really help this deck kind of hit the big numbers it's been struggling to hit. That I'm really excited about. I think that looks really cool. Because the Hopzation, the first attack is 30 active, 30 bench, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, like, we're dealing with Buddies there. We're doing a lot of things with the Hopzation that we can kind of do turn one. Right? It's just the one energy.
Yeah, I mean, you just play the you play a bundle.
Yeah.
Right, because then you can just bundle a Budu to the bench and then snipe it.
Oh, that's actually really, really, really funny. Yeah, that's actually great. Yeah, I think this deck could be really good. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not a believer in the bridges still. I think it can be good. I just think there's better options.
I think that like the new way that I've seen a lot of decks playing it, like in Japan, is they don't even, a lot of lists are cutting the Zacian altogether.
Okay.
And they're just strictly going Hops double, the one that when you evolve can gust up your opponent, like gust up a card from your opponent's bench.
And just play the okay. I understand.
Yeah, because that, so now
play
it's
pick
like
your knockouts.
Boss. Yeah. Yeah. It's a free boss on evolution. So you just like boss with a double and then either disrupt with Iono or, you know, build your hand back up or pick something up with Turo.
Sure. Yeah, I think having that double supporter kind of turn is really, 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 really powerful. And kind of reminds me of the old. I know a lot of people have called this the Hopstick like Buzzrock from back in the Sun and Moon era, which I kind of understand the you know what we're saying. The Lycanroc had an ability when you evolve, you basically it's boss. So double kind of having that same effect for a one prizer seems really strong. And will definitely be a card we see moving forward. I think the one thing this deck could struggle from, especially with if you rely on the double engine, is any kind of spread snipe damage. I think the Curum is going to be super incredible next format. Also the Water Ogre Pawn in the Terra box. That could be very strong. So I think that'll be one thing they have to look out for, because there's not really a ton of, I don't know if there's any bench protection next format.
Just the Rabska, but no one's going to be playing that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think Bridges will kind of maintain its position as like a middle of the pack kind of deck. But up next, Thad's favorite deck of all time, Ancient Box. I don't know. I think this deck's got legs. I do. And like, tell me why I'm wrong.
You can't draw.
Well, I don't want to draw cards. I'm trying to get things in the discard pile. What are you?
Yeah, all the things that you need to get in the discard pile that you have now go away.
I mean, what is okay? So like, I lose PokeStop, I lose Greninja.
That's all you needed to lose for it to be bad.
Explorer's Guidance, though. I don't know. I'm
wow.
Not a believer.
The problem is like you needed both, right? Like if you were to take PokeStop out of it right now, the list would be so bad. Because you're only at best. Well, you're only at best ever like discarding 4 cards a turn.
Sure.
I guess not at best, because if you draw an Ultra Ball, sure. But like they were only ever playing like maybe 1 or 2 Ultra Balls before.
You know,
it feels like
you're doing, I'm not really into it. All right. I'm here to have people tell me I'm right.
And now you have to play 2 prizers. You have to put down Pheasant Deputy so you can get it, so you can even get back into games.
You know what? I rescind my statement. That's the worst chat. Everyone roast him. You're kind of. I don't know. Maybe I'm coping with Ancient Box. This might be me coping.
You can cope all you want. I'm gonna cope deck.
I was gonna say your cope deck is it's Roaring Moon with the symbol at the end.
I mean, my cope deck is arguably a worse version of Ancient Box.
Probably just because you're a 1 prizer versus 2 prizer. But
Yeah,
I want this deck to be good. As much of a terrible matchup as it is for Raging Bolt. Up next, a
that's fair.
deck that kind of came out of nowhere is the Terrapagos Ogerpon box type deck, like the counter box, which is we actually had our league challenge. We had a guy who's been running it for a few weeks now. Really been enjoying the deck, and it can really make things weird. It just runs so many things. Like, it runs so many attackers, and just has like such a toolboxy arsenal to work with.
Yeah, I mean, like its biggest benefit is the fact that it runs so many like one of things.
Yeah,
Just because you can just go search with Noctowl and get the one of things that you need every turn.
yeah, for
So
sure.
like you're playing like one crystal, one switch, one counter catcher, one super rod, one stretcher, and like in most decks that sucks. Like one research. Right? You're playing pretty low counts of like these like super important cards, but like it really
Yeah,
doesn't matter because you're just going really wide, and you're saying, you know what, come and get it.
yeah, for
Plus,
sure.
the Pikachu is really annoying unless you're playing Bolt with
Pikachu's
Slitherwing
so cracked. Or a Roaring Moon EX.
or Roaring Moon. Yeah,
Delete EX. Yeah.
the Delete EX card.
Yeah, I think this deck, the overall, though, has a pretty good matchup spread. I think it's a very high IQ deck.
Oh, 100%.
And will require very good sequencing and very good resource management, which I think will limit its overall meta share. But it's definitely something that I think players need to be aware of and be concerned with, and like understand how your matchup needs to go for you to have success against this deck.
Yeah, I can see that.
Up next is a deck we were playing at locals last week, and I just said, I'm gonna play Bolt, play whatever you want, and you flipped over a Totodile, and I went, what does this do? And then you dropped up a Alligator, and I was like, what is this deck? So Thad, why should I play for Alligator?
I think Fraligator right now is super well positioned. Obviously, we saw the winning list in Japan, which I actually pulled up here just to be able to reference a little bit because I think it's something that players should be super aware of. So the way the deck works is it's sort of like a trap style deck
Sure.
that can also just out of nowhere hit for 280 if it really wants to. So you're constantly like you're switching between like wall style cards like Mimikyu and Melodic, depending on like what your matchups are perceived to be. But then you can put damage counters, 5 damage counters on the Fraligator, move them off with Monkey Dory, and then you're just sitting behind big walls. The Totodile makes it so your opponent can't retreat, so it's functionally a like a Snorlax style deck. You just trap something in the active. You play a
Sure.
bunch of counter catchers. So you trap something. You can even do like a bunch of damage. You can do like what is it? 150 damage and stall, which is crazy.
Yeah, it seems
So
pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's definitely like a slow pace. Like even like playing it myself, I'm like, okay, like the sequencing has to be right. The one thing I didn't love too much about the Japanese list though was the lack of super rod. You don't have a lot of recursion, and if you're going against something really fast like a Raging Bolt, that can put you in a weird situation really quick.
Yeah.
So I think something like a super rod. I ran out of resources when we played. I had no way to get another Fraligator going.
Yeah.
But I think something like a super rod would do absolutely wonders in this list. So yeah, it's a good deck. It's like a wall style. It's like a
What's your ace
damaging
spec?
wall stall trolley.
Trolley? That makes sense.
Yeah,
I was just thinking,
just because you just go big real quick.
Yeah, that makes sense. You got to set up, and then if you don't set up, you lose. And it's a deck that doesn't naturally have a ton of draw power.
No, you're kind of just living off top deck. The winning list in Japan played 4 Iono 2 research, which I think is correct. I think
Okay.
that's the right supporter line you want to be on.
Mm-hmm.
Other
Yeah,
than that, I mean, I think I think the list is good.
I think this is like a way better like hit and run deck than Flygon, just because you can hit the big number. You're a one prizer,
Yeah.
and you're not a two prizer named Flygon.
Yeah.
Like,
You're not really hitting for relevant weakness like Flygon can. But like at the end of the day, like who cares?
yeah, but you're Flygon and you're a two prizer.
Yeah.
Like I feel like you're like Flygon's a very grindy deck that like doesn't have the ability to be grindy. Like when I can just 2/2/2 you, like that's not grindy. That's turbo-y.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this deck could be
I think
very, very concerning. Especially if you're like a turbo player. Like if they can figure out the recursion and be able to set up multiple for alligators in a game, like it could be very difficult for you. Because they're kind of doing that thing that like Ancient Box does really well, where they force you into a 6 prize game.
Yep.
And like you can't 2/2 them, and they're gonna say we're doing 1-1-1-1-1-1. You know, before we're winning the game. So this deck could be very, very annoying for players. Speaking of absurdly annoying decks that I want to throw off a cliff, the Walls deck, the dreaded Walls deck that everyone loves to hate, myself being hater number one. I actually don't think this deck is as good as people think it is. I think it's like any control deck. Like if you put in the 500 hours required to be good with it, it can be really good. But it's not a deck you're going to be able to pick up and play, even though like for alligators, shut off EX, I win. Like that just doesn't really happen. Like it can. I just think against a good player, they'll know their route, and they'll be able to navigate around for alligator or through for alligator, or oh my god, for Rigorath.
I knew you meant, but yes.
Yeah. I'm like looking at my notes, and for alligator was right above the Walls deck. But yeah, I think I think it's real though. I don't think it's as real as people think, but I don't think it's bad by any means.
It's not bad.
I think it's the optimal control deck, at least until we get proven otherwise, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, my only argument is I think that if you're really going for like some sort of like wall stall strategy, right now I just think Alligator is the ultimate, is like the best way of like not only is it hit and run, but it's also like a like playing the Mimikyu. Yeah, it's a one prizer. The melodic is really good. That just melodic, just you put up one melodic in that deck and you beat Dragapult instantly.
Mm-hmm.
They have 0 answers, so
yeah, I would agree with that for sure.
I think Walls is real to a point. I think Walls will get better over time.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I don't think it's all that good. I think it's like maybe if I had to tier list it, probably like a C or D tier.
Yeah, for sure. I would probably agree C tier. I would probably say B or C.
Yeah.
Up next, I'm gonna hand the microphone to you. Show me that mammoth.
Oh, you want the mammoth?
I want the mammoth.
We're talking about.
We're not talking about practice. We're talking about the mammoth swine.
Mammoth. Yeah, so mammoth swine I think is good. I think it's well positioned. It's a huge HP number to hit.
Sure.
I would even say it can be somewhat difficult for Bolt to sequence, like to keep that, 350, 350, 350. That's tough. But I think the weakness comes in the fact that it just requires so much setup. And sitting behind something like a Mimikyu or Budu just doesn't really do it. So and like energy acceleration's tough because you're playing either the Garganackle, the Blaziken, or the Quaquaval. I mean, having Pidgeot super powerful, it'll be a consistent and good list just because
Sure.
the Mammoth gets the Pokemon and then the Pidgeot gets the rare candy. So as long as you set up and you're playing the right ace spec, you should be fine. But its lack of results to me is somewhat concerning in the way that like I think you just get ran off the board in most instances.
It seems like it. I think it also being able to return knockout with an Ogerpon, like, just seems really strong. And I think, yeah, like, I
Yeah.
think especially against the Turbo decks, like, I think before you set up, you're already down 2 prizes. So at some point, you have to force them to not take a knockout, and I just don't know if you do that. It also seems really
Yeah.
trappable because it has a 4 retreat cost. So, like, if you have some way to take away retreat ability, like maybe, I don't know, if you like sobbed, you're just crying, and you said, no retreat.
No retreat for
You
you.
could really just lock a Mamoswine. Just lock that up by a turn, rebuild a board state, and keep on swinging.
You big bite with your Totodile.
Oh my god, that's crazy. It's called Big Bite.
Yeah, Totodile's
That's
attack
hilarious.
is called Big Bite.
That is hilarious. Yeah, I think this deck could be real. I think also it not having results in Japan might also just because it's a slower deck, and ties are losses there. So it'll be interesting to see. I honestly, when we first started talking about like next format stuff, I really hated it, the idea of it. I was like, this is gonna suck. I'm gonna have to like look at all these new cards. But like the more I do it, the more I'm like, this is actually kind of fun. And I think it is just because this format's so terrible. Like I just hate.
Yeah, we're
Surging
just jaded by
Sparks.
having a bad format.
Yeah, and it also just feels like every Pokemon format. I feel like ever. A lot of it's just more of the same,
Yeah.
and there's like 1 or 2 new decks. Like for the most part, I
I
think of
agree.
all the new stuff, you know, there's stuff that already exists. Some stuff gets better, some stuff gets worse. But as far as like brand new archetypes, we just don't have that many viable options. Which I was kind of excited when they announced the trainer stuff. So I'm hoping we get more viable trainer stuff. But it is time to talk about the trainer stuff, Dad. We have one deck I really want to talk about, and that is the Ends package of things. The Ends Darmanitan, the Ends Zoroark.
Yeah.
So you've been playing this deck a little bit. What are your initial like kind of thoughts on the Ends package as we call it? Because this was like the most hyped card of all the trainer stuff was the Ends Zoroark. Everyone said it was Trade 2.0. I have not been a believer because it requires 2 dark as opposed to 2 colorless. And we had the old N or the old Zoroark, we had DCE and ways to really power up that attack in 1 turn pretty quickly. And this time I just don't think we do.
Well, now all you got to do is get Ends PP up.
That's true. If you get you some Ends PP up, you're chilling. And the fact that that will be the English name of that card, I'm a little concerned. There's going to be some parent at some local who is like, this 30-year-old man playing Pokemon cards just told my child to grab some Ends PP up.
Yikes.
And the support tickets are going to just flood.
Yeah. I think that the Ends deck is sort of not real.
Okay.
And my justification is this. Your best attacker is a spread attacker. The spread attacker discards your energy. Rebuilding the energy sucks. At best, I think your best attacker is probably the Reshiram. You're doing 170 and you don't have to discard any cards. I've seen a couple lists pop up that are a little bit more like control styled, that are playing the Ends Purloin, where your opponent reveals their hand and you choose a card there, you put it at the bottom of their deck. So like it's more of like a hand lock style Ends deck with like Zerosix
Okay.
and like Grabber and stuff. It's more disruptive than anything, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not super sold on this. I mean, you can hit decent numbers if you play like the Petromunt package with it. So like Pecharunt, poison your Zoroark, throw a Binding Mochi on it, and that 170 becomes what? 220 with poison.
I think so, yeah.
So because it's what 170 plus 40 plus the poison. So
Yeah, 220.
yeah, I don't know what you're really knocking out. Bolt has 240.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see if there's some kind of package some people we're not seeing yet, or maybe there's cards that haven't been announced yet in like a set or two that make this deck a lot more viable. I mean, we have to remember the greatest blow up and fall off of all time in the Pokemon trading card game, our boy Reggie Drago V-Star.
Oh my god.
Bro went from the bulk bin to the top of the line in like 1 second and fell off just as fast.
100%.
Yeah, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this works out. But I think overall in the format, I think we got a fun format coming up. I think there is a lot of viability between the turbo decks, the setup decks, kind of every deck in between. I'm kind of curious what your top 3 are at that, as far as like decks you would not decks you would want to play, but like if you had to metagame like Atlanta right now. I think my top 3, I'm gonna say Bolt, I'm gonna say Dragapult, I'm gonna say the Walls deck.
This is almost not fun, but I will say if I had a metagame, I would put it's got to be like Bolt, Polt, and to me maybe Fraligator.
Fair.
But I think like if I were to scope out a little bit, and like call maybe 3 underrated decks, I would definitely call out Bridges, Charizard, and Ceruledge.
I like that. I think I don't know why. I think we're gonna have like a top 16 Mamoswine.
A what?
Like a top 16 Mamoswine in Atlanta. I think someone's gonna cook something crazy that no one's ready for, and no one's gonna know how to like. People are gonna think like Mamoswine's like a meme, and like we did that for Worlds, and that deck ended up winning.
That was crazy.
Which, you know, everyone's got their own opinion on that situation. We don't need to go into that right now. But, you know, it's one of those things. I think Mamoswine, it seems kind of memey until someone cracks the code. You know?
It's true.
They used to think
Someone's
lobster was
cooking.
nasty, and now it's like $40 a pound. You know? So that, I think this has been a lot of fun. I think this is honestly the most fun episode we've done ever.
Yeah.
I think like the entire existence of this podcast has just been during this like absolutely unfun format. But Thad, I want to thank you for joining me today on the PokeStop podcast. Everyone watching today, thank you so much for watching. If you were listening on anywhere you find podcasts, this has been the PokeStop podcast. I hope you have an amazing evening, an amazing week, and don't forget, Snorlax is no longer in format, and we can thank everyone for that. We'll see y'all later on the next time on the PokeStop podcast. Have a good one.
Later.